Okay, so we're trying something different this week and for the next few weeks, and I have no idea how it's going to go. This could be a total disaster, or it could be really awesome. My guess is maybe somewhere in between. I don't know. We'll see. But here's what we're doing over the next couple of weeks. I wanted a way for us to pull out who are we as a church, and what are the open door values and faith journeys and things like that. And the other piece is how do we get to know each other in a better way and stuff like that. And so here we are. We're going to try a late night show interview style process and see what happens. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to have a number of you up here, and we're just going to work through some stories and who we are and what I think is going to happen. So keep your ears open for this. What I think is going to happen is you're going to hear a lot of different views on who God is and what church is supposed to be. And along the way, you're going to hear a lot about who we are as a church or as a body or as Christians as a whole, and what we're supposed to be doing. So while surface level, I think you'll hear open door this, open door that, a little bit deeper down in those words are, this is what I'm trying to do with my own faith, and this is how I see God. And I think you'll hear and learn in that process. And so I'm hopeful that we have some really great conversations and that you enjoy that, and that it's not a total disaster. That's my hope for the next few weeks. So today, I thought it made sense to start here today. Oh, we've got our fireside on, so we're like... Today, these are pre-Christianson Barker interviews, okay? So what that means is everyone up here this morning came here before I did, and even had parts in founding Open Door. And so I think we'll get a really neat perspective on what is this place? What did you do here? Why are you here? Why is this happening? Why is this even here, right? And it's before I even got involved, so I don't know what's going to come out. That's the fun part of that. So we're going to start with Andy Aaron. Come on up and join us, Andy. So Andy was one of the founding 4 or 6 or I don't know, 17, half a dozen, they all died. 7. That got dark.
They all died.
That got dark really fast.
It's a lot of work.
Andy and Sharon are left.
No, Patty.
And Patty. Okay. So tell us how we got here. You were all over Coquitlam Mission, I don't know, and now we're here in Maple Ridge. How did we get here?
Well, we didn't say Sheena because you said Open Door, but Sheena certainly helped plant Open Door. Mm. But there's 2 notches behind that. We started meeting in a hotel. I think it's called the Quality Inn now. Used to be Best Western. And we came here because someone saw our sign on the highway, an A-board sign we put out, and they thought, well, we have a slot, come rent from us, and we did. And here we are that way as far as place. But before that, we were at Burnaby, where Shandy still goes, and we went there because another church had closed. And so we went there to think things over and to sort. That's really what I want to talk about today,
Sorting.
Yeah, so we came here a long time ago. It's been a lot of years.
Sorting. So what we could say about Andy is that he knows the church inside and out, first of all, and how and why we got here and all of that.
Sorry, we can't hear you. You got to turn it on. I don't know how you turn it on.
It's on. You got to speak into it. We're live with new microphones today.
Okay.
Yeah, because we couldn't hear it all.
Okay. Trying to. Cool. Or just shout. You can do that. So with all that in mind, here's where we start this morning. What is the most open door thing that we're not doing currently?
Well, I was going to answer that by what we are doing, but
Right.
I'll do a Jeopardy thing, okay? We're called Open Door Church, not Screen Door Church. We're not trying to screen out people, keep the gnats out, the bugs, the people, the things that shouldn't be in here. It's open door. Every time someone's amazed at what we do here, I say, well, it's open door. You can't, they come in.
So we let all the gnats in.
The gnats.
Just to be clear.
And so
It's you.
what that is that, as you were saying, that what we're going to find out is not what we're trying to somehow achieve and aspire to, but what we actually are. This is us. And I think that shows popular because that's really how life is. So when we talk about this, get through this, whatever, we won't have somehow guided ourselves to some place where someone thought we should be. And this is before you. The name was before Bradley. And it just kind of stuck it resonated and then stuck. And so I guess what will happen is we'll find out, so like a team, any sport you think of, soccer, hockey, football today, whatever, is that a team doesn't try to be that, it just tries to win with what they've got. So a team is an accumulation of what skills arrived in the players. And they shouldn't try to fill holes and things like that, but they're just a result of who they are. And I think that's it. So our values then, I think what we are trying to do, and you're here because we connected in that way, not me and you, but the thoughts and our resumes and our postings, is that we are never going to say, here are our values, though you have met with everyone, let them know what. And I guess the one they need to agree to absolutely is that they'll help with that.
Yeah.
You know? But and I don't think on that list is any beliefs.
Right.
It's values.
It's values.
And so I think a lot of people think of church. There's a blue sign on the highway that says Open Door Church that away. Another one at the 114th that says that away. I don't know what people see a lot of effort to get them there. But I guess I don't know what people see when they see them. Probably church time, like that. But it's just an invitation, and it says open doors, plain as day. I guess the last thing on that question is that when you come here, you won't be a new person. Sometimes someone has a change in life and they have a brand new life, whatever. Maybe they almost died and they have a brand new start in life. No, it's the same life. It's just now it's this. And so I think we're not trying to change anyone to make them a Christian, make them whatever. If they come here and come among us and stay, it'll just be them here. And hearing things like Corinne said at two different times this morning, one in the Lord's Supper and one in the offering, that tell us a lot to hear. Mm-hmm. So I think what we're doing is those things, and everything else is what we're not doing that you'd normally find someplace else.
Mm. So loving people, just kind of at its core. Yeah. So how does I talk a lot about loving our neighbor, but how does loving our neighbor make or break church? This church, but any church, if inviting people in is part of that, or part of core? What do we?
Well, loving your neighbor is God's theory of everything. Just that. There's 2 places in the Bible that specifically talks about that in a Samaritan way. The Samaritans were a group that the Jews did not like, looked down on them, and the Samaritans didn't like the Jews because they looked down on them, and they thought they were hoity-toity and thought they were the thing, and they just didn't get along for some political reasons and just life after the political event. And so Jesus makes a point of going to Samaria by himself. He had to tell his friends that he went there, and he finds a woman who's a Samaritan woman and starts talking to her, and these are the things he should be doing. And there's a story about what happened. But the point is he went over there and on purpose and talked to her to say that we're one. Mm-hmm. You're my neighbor and I love you. And the other one is the one we think about, the story of the Good Samaritan. And somebody did something nice for someone, that sure helped him out. But we taught in our class, that class in there, that the idea is that of the story really is that it was answer to the question the disciples are asking, who is my neighbor? Like, who do I have to love? He says, well, how about a Samaritan? He goes right back to that same place and tells them the story of the Samaritan's the only one to help, and maybe you didn't. So in that way, I think it's God's theory of everything, loving those around us, living among them, loving among them. So I think that's what we do here.
And we grow because of that?
Well, in the class we talked about our neighbors, not the people you can see. Like there's Vicky across the street in the blue house, and Lance back there, and people, Jimmy there, and like that. And it's not around your house. It's maybe a bigger area. But Samaria was another country, really. Another people, was a better way to put it. They thought different, they were different, didn't talk. And that's the way the world is now. It's all over the news with the smallness of media and all that, making us know everything. So I came from a very white state, a white town, Dallas, Texas. Grew up there.
White.
And so it's not that I had prejudices. It's just that's the fishbowl I grew up in. And I resisted a lot of it, but was unaware of how much I didn't. And coming here and living and working among all kinds of races, it's made me a better man. And I've learned that my neighbors are worldwide.
Yeah, it's actually hard to see what your neighbor is in like an all-white community or whatever, a uniform community. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to even know what does that even mean?
Well, when I was in graduate school, one of our classmates, who was a little bit more mature age, to come back to school, he got a job, and he was really happy. He got a job at preaching at the church in White Settlement.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's a place.
All right, we're going to add a player to the game right now. Carolyn Stewart, again, been here longer than I have. Been leading worship for 9 years? 8 years?
I lost count.
Yep. Let's get down.
I don't know. It all
Lots
seems
of
like
years.
5 years ago.
And it does all seem like 5 years.
Everything
Yeah.
my go-to is 5 years ago.
I used to say we've been going for about 5 years, and then that sort of stuck. So we're still kind of saying
2009 is when I came.
Okay.
For some reason, that's sticking out. I think I put that on my resume.
Okay.
Leading worship since 2009.
We're going to put Carolyn's resume up now.
Yeah.
We got that?
It helps me to do time, so remember time.
So perfect timing, because one of the things that as leading worship and as one that's really been also part of forming this church, why do we need church? This is part of your role, is church. And
Was that the question I said yes to when you sent them to us? Actually, I didn't think I did. No, I'm just kidding. Well, my thought, because here with raising kids and trying to bring them to church and having a husband that actually doesn't come to church. So, I have this battle of, why do I need to go to church? I can worship God from my living room. And I'm like, yeah, you can. You can worship God anywhere. And you really, you can. My thinking is, I know I need church because I'm not going to worship him in my bedroom every week. I'm not going to worship him over there, wherever, every week. So I believe that we're creatures of habit, and we have to, I think it was set up for us to come weekly, to just continue to develop that habit of worship. And I think, it's great to come to worship when you're feeling great and awesome and how exciting it is. But you know what? It's not like that all the time. Not for me. There's days that I'm like, I don't even want to be here. I'd rather just curl up in my bed and sleep in till like 1 o'clock in the morning. But I know that in those times, that's when I really, really need to go. And I'll just go. And you know what? From experience, from what's happened to me is God always encourages me somehow through you, each of you here. And so I find that if it's not me coming here to encourage you, you guys encourage me. And I really believe that that's why God set up the church. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, and
kind of, okay.
And to sort of add to that, when we sometimes, not often, but sometimes you give me a sparse amount of feedback on sermons and things, and we did a series in the Psalms where we sort of dipped into some of the darker Psalms that aren't fun, and are those moments when you don't feel like doing anything, getting out of bed or going to church, certainly, and putting the smile on. Those weeks where we intentionally created that sort of solemn atmosphere are one of the most feedbacks that I've gotten in 5 years.
The sad ones.
On the need for that, yeah, and just being in community on those sad sort of days. So as being here before the CBs, what can you tell us? And you, not part of that original traveled group, but what can you tell us about those values that you've watched and showed up for to begin with and stuck with? Why
here?
Yeah.
Why here?
Yeah.
So I'm after Andy and the group that started the Open Door. I came, but I'm before Bradley's family. So when I was part of a very a conservative church that had it was just a cappella, and women did not lead. Women didn't speak in church. We didn't pray, especially if there was men around. So and that's where I was for, I guess, 20 years or so. I don't know. It seems like 20 is my go-to number too. 20, it feels like 20 years. And the last church that I was in, it was a pretty big church. There was a lot more people than here. There was over 100. And I've always been part of small churches and always been a person to serve, because I really think I know that's what I need. I need to just stay active in my faith and need to be doing things, because that's, to me, is where I get the most out of. But when a friend told me about this church, and I thought, at that other group, as wonderful as it was and everything, I wasn't growing. I didn't feel like I can contribute anything because it was so big, and any ideas that I came up with, nobody really got back to me and said anything and said, "Hey, yeah, go for it," And it was just a nod and went like this, and I went, "Wow, that's." It's killing me. I thought, I've been in church for 20 years. I've followed God for 20 years. I'm excited for God. I want to be excited. I want to share what I know, and not to have anybody kind of go, yeah, well, let's see where we can fit you in, right? And that was kind of why I started searching. I started looking at all kinds of churches and groups, and I wanted to go where there was instruments, and because I like that, although the church that I was in kind of said instruments are a no-no in worship. So coming here was kind of interesting, because it was totally against everything that I was being taught. previously, and I had a lot of my friends say to me, question whether my faith was strong or not, because I ended up coming here. I ended up being on the worship team as a woman on the worship team, leading a congregation and singing. I said, so that was a challenge from
with the guitar.
With the guitar, yes. So so coming here, and what I found is it was the people, when we were talking, it was about, well, let's discover it together. Let's discover where God wants you. Let's discover where God has taken us all together. And I really like that look at it. It was just a matter of, it was more rereading some of the scriptures that we saw and rereading them and looking at them in a different way, and it was, it's kind of like, I remember this sermon one time, this preacher spoke, and he says, the one where Peter's walking on the water and then he starts to sink, right? And so there's two ways you could kind of say that. And I always thought, Jesus was saying, Peter, you have little faith. Like, what are you thinking? Until I heard this sermon, he says, Peter, come on, trust me. And you see Jesus saying it with a smile rather than a disappointment, right? And so it made me think, and then I wanted to just be with other people that say, let's stop bringing each other down in faith, but ways of picking each other up in faith, and how can we grow, and how can we, God is bigger than our four walls that we're in, and any four walls that can contain us. He's just bigger. And I feel that I've just, in my past instruction, has been keeping him smaller than what he is. So that's part of coming here and growing here.
Whoa.
Sorry. I get excited. I do.
Okay, so you're not the first from the pre-CB group that have told me something like, I was sharing about this and they started asking me about my faith or questioning my faith or whatever. And so I want to pair that with the discovery question or the discovery statement of discovering what we're doing and where God wants us and those kinds of things. So before we rotate you guys through here, what makes that strong faith? If looking at God bigger than smaller is something that has been questioned in terms of faith, what makes, and for both of you, what makes this strong faith of discovery?
What builds strong faith?
Sure.
Discovery does. Yeah.
Do that.
What makes strong faith is discovery, and that's why we have exploring God's love together, I guess. It might be different for everybody, but I think there are some common things. I heard at Coquitlam Church, the one where we started way back, the one in Coquitlam that closed, a young couple, the guy told me, said one day, one miracle can just change your whole day. But for him, it was not miracles in the sense he was talking about just some good fortune. He was kind of making a bit of a joke. But for me, what I think makes faith is actually kind of walking on God in his work, just interrupting yourself into his room where he's working or something. I was last night at home putting a dishwasher together that actually Angel gave us, and I was unrolling one of the wires that had been bundled up, and I said, but Greg wound this up. I'm undoing some work of Greg's hands. And I've done some people that way too. You see some of God's work in people. Shandy's in town, but she's not here because she's at her church, Burnaby, the place we camped for a while. Because that's where she hammered things out. That's where she put in the time. Sometimes you don't really get good at something. Some people say you have 10,000 hours into something. Violin, don't tell Kyle, but something you're trying to do. Learn to speak, learn to do something well that takes some skill. And so I got to think, I wonder if I have 10,000 hours in my faith yet. So I got to thinking with my head, and it didn't work so good, so I used my calculator. And I said, it's way past 10,000. It's like probably 20 push button, push button, push button. Oh, no, wait. That's 20,000 days. And then you add my childhood to that. So my answer is it takes time to build faith. It's a slow smolder. And then you look back, you see some of my youth groups, their kids are coming to church, that kind of thing. And so that's my miracle. Just one miracle like that, seeing God's handiwork in some life, work of the marriage, work of the family, and seeing it all work out makes me know it's worth time and gives me faith that not me doing it for sure, but just watching God, his hand, undoing some of his work and seeing how it all worked.
A slow smolder.
Perfect.
Slow smolder. You have to repeat the questions for me.
Faith. What makes it? What makes faith? What makes it strong? What makes it? What brings that discovery? If discovery is a value.
That's a big question.
Right. It's a little unfair.
Yeah, it's kind of a big question. How about I just say what made my faith stronger? Okay. So I actually remember where I was. I was driving home from worship one time, I used to go to a church in Oak Ridge area, and I remember saying to, had brought the kids, and I remember saying to, just, how you just go through things in your head, and I was going, oh, what a dirty church. Like, somebody clean up. Like, my kids are there, nobody's cleaning up the church. And and it was like, I remember feeling going like this and going, what did they do? And like, what, somebody. Then I went, and then this song came on the radio, and it was, What Do I Know of Holy? And then I listened to it, and I just started crying, and it just made me think, what am I doing? What am I doing to serve? I could clean, and so for me, it was a moment of changing my faith and looking at others. I started to look at myself more. So that helped me to be more, what am I doing? 'Cause I believe. What am I doing? 'Cause I believe. I don't know anything about being holy as holy as he is, right? Like he's just, I can't even fathom that. When you think about it, I can't fathom a God that's created a whole universe and yet and is still there hanging out with us, basically. Like, we're just like, you ever see those things where they, when you do the Google Maps and you back away and you say, like, how small are we really? And so I went, who am I to even complain about anything? So that, to me, was part of trying to understand and grasp how amazing and big he is, and who am I in that? Like, who am I to complain?
Beautiful. Let's give it a round of applause. Thank you, Carolyn, Andy.
Mic drop. Just kidding.
Wait, don't do that. Okay, we're going to go a little bit long this morning because next up we have the Freemans, who've been around a long time. Come on out, guys. Curtis and Corinne Freeman.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for coming.
My
Thanks.
movie.
Yes. Oh. What are you showing in next? Communion?
Yeah. Is this turned on?
I don't know. Nope. Up. That red one goes up.
That one?
Mine's on.
Okay, just want to let you know, in a few minutes, I'm going to open my mouth, and Corinne's voice is going to come out. Just so we're all aware of that. Don't be frightened.
All right. We're going to practice that. Okay, so I gave you questions, and you said you can ask me anything. So here we go. You guys have been here. How long have you been here?
I have no idea.
We met Best Western, so
We at times met also, we went in Coquitlam, so we've been around for a long, long time. Longer than my hair wasn't this color when we started.
Yeah. We got some Santa going.
yeah, we went to Best Western and with Andy and Sharon and some of the other people, and then we came here.
So a while, and you and I, and we just heard from Carolyn, come out of the same tradition,
Yes.
and so we have some history. And every once in a while, I share about that. I'm pretty harsh. I'm curious if you want to.
I would like to share a little bit. We did come out of a very, very conservative. I can remember my uncle telling me that he was really, really afraid of a woman saying amen at church because she might teach a man something and then they'd both be destined for hell unless they repented.
Hellbound.
Having said that, these are very, very, very God-fearing people. They are, I would say they're very, very close to what the Pharisees are in that they know the Bible. Sometimes, though, their heart doesn't get quite where their knowledge is, and as a result of that, it causes some real problems in terms of conflict because they so strongly believe in what they've been led to believe or what they've come to that same conclusion of that they can't see past that. And as a result, what you find is that people are absolutely vindicated in their own mind of moving people away. It becomes a conversation. If you listen many times, doesn't matter whether you're ultra-conservative, ultra-liberal, what you're going to hear is the words they, them, those. And when you start hearing those are words of separation. They do that, we do this. And when you get to both ends of that, if you can't get past that, you never grow. I can remember as we came forward and as we began to question stuff, and by the way, the church, people who founded the church we came from back in a long, long time ago would recognize this church. They would not recognize the churches that I actually came from because they were outlaws. They were people who tried to do things differently. They looked at God in a whole different way. And as they began to move away, and as they began to die away, people began to write down, this is what we believe, because that's what they believe. But if they were alive today, this is where they would be. I started changing when I looked at the word ecclesia, which is church, and it means assembly. Then I noticed in the first century, people were added to the church by God, not by people. And as we began to envision, I can remember Andy, Don, I, and some other folks, as we began to envision, what do we want? How do we want to shape this? Because we knew just staying where we were was not the answer. We were like the servant with one talent. We were bearing it. We weren't going anywhere, but we were pretty safe. Nobody was going to come pick on us. And as we decided, okay, we've got to change something because doing more of exactly what we've been doing is not going to make us successful in terms of being able to reach out to people and show them what God is through us. So what we did, we sat down and we talked for a long, long time about what is church. We talked for a long, long time about who is it that we want to be able to lead in that capacity. And we began to form ideas and thoughts. And as those things began to come about, we moved into this place. We then began to look at, well, how do we perceive our children? Because my children don't come to church very often. One son goes to another church, but they don't. And part of it wasn't their fault. Part of it, we have to take that responsibility for it, because trying as hard as we did, we weren't fulfilling them. We weren't giving them something that they needed. And so we looked at it and we said, all right, as a group, how are we going to affect that? And we made a conscious decision that our children were going to be able to get up and dance. They were going to be able to come and sit up front if that's what they wanted to do. We were going to encourage them to take part in leadership things, and we were going to continue to train them to where this church wasn't necessarily just our church. It was their church. There was their assembly of people. And if you look around, there were some folks who didn't agree with that. Those folks did move along because they felt church should be a quiet, respectful, very, very solemn place. But God isn't quiet. He isn't solemn, and he isn't ever all by himself alone. If you look at the world around you, you can see God, and you know right away he isn't a quiet type individual. So we decided those things when we went out to look for the Christian Barkers. It wasn't just an immediate, well, let's just go find someone. We interviewed a lot of people. We had a number of people come up. We were looking for an individual and a family who were willing to commit for some time, and also that family that was willing to accept people, to help lead people to the understanding both of the very, very conservative and the very, very liberal, that can bring them into a place where they can come, get along, talk, feel safe, and be able to grow. Because where I was originally is not where I am today. Hopefully where I am today, by the time I end my life, I will have grown some more, up or down, but grown, not just out. So those are the things that we originally set down, how we came to vision. And when we first came into this building and looked at trying to buy it, it took a vision to be able to see what it could be. And now as people walk by, they wonder, why in the world did anybody ever sell this building?
Well,
Because it's so beautiful.
most of them wonder if we just built it because they just drove right by before.
And some of the people who come to yoga, I work with one particular young lady's husband or boyfriend who comes, and they just say, we've known this. They've lived here all their lives, and they say we've seen such a difference in this building, but also in the people around and what we do. So we do have an effect, even if you don't understand it, and even if you don't see it. Many, many years from now, we have that continued effect. Okay, I'll let Corinne talk. Okay, that's enough.
Can you press on that? So you two were instrumental in the change in how we looked at our kids in terms of how they belong and stuff like that. And if you expand that, it's their church. If you expand that, it's their church at communion. It's their church during worship. And then anyone that walks in, it's not somebody that comes in and says, "Oh, it's not. We go to those people's church. This is ours." Can you tell us a little bit about how that? Because I know that's not where you came from.
Yes, where I came from, I felt like it was more of an adult church. I felt like everything, like we felt very highly accepted as long as we agreed with what everybody else said or did.
Yeah, right.
And so, everybody accepted us for a time until we started to change our minds on certain things. And the one thing that I looked around at was the fact that my boys were not coming to church. And I thought, so we talked about it a lot and thought about it, and it was like, I remember my kids sitting in a chair, and I was told them to be quiet. And if they weren't quiet, I pinched them. I pinched them on the leg.
Just quiet. Ask them.
And I remember, my kids were getting tired of this, so finally they'd go, "Ouch!" And it would embarrass me, right?
They know how to do that.
Yeah. And so I thought, wow. Years later I thought, I went to a church that really, it was adult-based, and it wasn't kid-based. And so my kids didn't feel that was a part of them. They didn't feel it was a part of their lives. And so they went on to do whatever. As soon as they got old enough to where we couldn't convince them to come with us and sit still. And so that convinced us that we needed to change. We needed to change our direction, our thoughts, our minds towards our children. We needed them to feel like they were a part of us. And I've got 2 grandchildren that we have brought since they were in diapers.
They were 2 or 3 days old.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were tiny, tiny babies when we brought them. And when you talk to them, they will say to you, our church. My kids never said that. My kids never said, this is our church, this is my church. And so when you get kids that say that, you realize, okay, I must be doing something right, because they want to come. Ours didn't want to come. Ours wanted to stay home and watch TV or whatever else they could think of doing. And so that's what changed our attitude.
So last question, because we're way over time and I'm not respecting our time, but can you just reflect briefly on how do we carry that and that sort of shift in thinking about our church and that sort of thing? What do we do next as we carry that value forward? Where are we going, or where do we need to?
I can address that to a certain extent. What we do is we continue to train our children. We challenge them. We allow them to say a prayers. We allow them to be a part of a worship team. And you will notice at times that occasionally someone will get up and they'll help, uninvited or invited. And that's what we want. But we also want to be able to help them understand that they're not alone in the world. There are other people out there that think the same. We want to be able to give them the courage of their convictions, to be able to say, this is who I am. I would love you one way or the other, but this is who I am. And instead of changing, affect change. To do that, we've also brought along, after some consideration and some thoughts, we brought along our next minister, whom we think will take us to that level. And that was not just, oh gee, we need somebody else. It was, let's find that exact person who can do the things that these children need to bring them to that realization of who they are, and to be proud of that, and to be able to understand whom God is, and that through him they can do all things.
Thank you. Thank you, Freeman.